What's going on, everyone? Welcome into the Cleveland Browns Report by Chat Sports. Matthew Peterson here with a couple big rumors stemming from the Browns-Eagles Week 2 preseason game. There might be some interest on Philadelphia's side to trade for Kareem Hunt, and some people have suggested a player swap of Jalen Reagor for Kareem Hunt. I don't like it. I'll tell you more about why not later on in the video. Plus, the Browns' run defense yesterday, not bueno. It was pretty hard to watch. So could all of a sudden the Sheldon Richardsons of the world come back into play, and maybe the Browns will look to the free agency to improve this run defense? Before we get to all that, make sure you like today's video to start the show. If you love the Browns, hit that thumbs up icon. Now, let's talk about Kareem Hunt maybe going to Philly, because ever since the running back for the Browns has requested a trade, there have been trade rumors popping up left and right. And here he is talking with Eagles head coach Nick Sirianni during the Browns and Eagles joint practices just a couple of days ago. And if you know one thing about the Eagles under Sirianni last year, it was they loved to run the football. When you got a mobile quarterback like Jalen Hurts, you can just pour fuel on the fire and add on to this run game, because that is what motored them to a 7-seed playoff performance. They had the great honor of getting their ass kicked by the Bucs last year, but that was the bread and butter of this Eagles offense last year. And when you have a running back like Miles Sanders, who was a bit disappointing last season, and now he's dealing with a hamstring injury, it doesn't take a football rocket scientist to start connecting Josh Dobbs to start connecting the dots on Eagles love to run the football. Miles Sanders is a little banged up right now. Kareem Hunt to Philly. Now, here's kind of my take on all this. You're not going to get what Kareem Hunt is worth in a trade. So why would you unload a player that's going to be a huge piece of your offense with Jacoby Brissett at quarterback for majority of the season for what? Jalen Reagor, a bust of a receiver, and a future day 3 pick? I mean, unfortunately, the way the running back market works this day and age, for example, last year, Sony Michel gets traded to the Rams after Cam Akers gets hurt. He ended up not being worth the 2 picks the Rams gave up. In fact, you saw teams like the Ravens and the Titans last year who dealt with pretty hardcore running back injuries, and they decided, you know what? Trading for someone else's running back isn't worth the pick we would give up when we could just go to free agency. So you're not going to get a great, awesome return. You're not going to get a 3rd or a 4th round pick most likely. Pro Football Focus, for example, said he's probably going to go for a 2024 5th. And that sounds pretty generous to me. So here's a popular trade idea that has been tossed around a little bit. It's almost a complete player swap. Jalen Reagor for Kareem Hunt. Now, Kareem Hunt is a better player than Reagor, so I added my own flair to it, even though I hate this trade, and said you got to at least toss some kind of compensation for Cleveland, taking a worse player, right? When you're just doing player for player swaps here, it's really hard not to have it be a fair trade, because someone inevitably will feel like they got ripped off. Now, if Reagor needs a change of scenery, I could buy into that. But before we even look at Jalen Reagor and his side of the equation in more detail, would you do this Kareem Hunt trade? Why for yes and for no? The only reason why I see someone arguing for yes is Kareem Hunt is on the last year of his deal, so you want to maybe try and get something for the player. And there might be this guy called Jerome Ford who's looked awesome in preseason. Now, first, quickly on Jalen Reagor. He has been a disappointment since being a first-round pick for the Eagles. We all know this. That's not new information. Just 695 career yards. What's really tough about Jalen Reagor is what he did so well at TCU, which was be sort of a catalyst and a spark and make something out of nothing. He hasn't had that with the Eagles, right? So if your greatest attribute when teams are looking at you in the draft has been stripped away from you in the NFL, all of a sudden everyone's looking around going, well, what can you do? So to me, Reagor could benefit from a change of scenery. Actually, definitely could benefit. It's hard to be worse than he is right now for Philly. He even might be a cut candidate for the Eagles. It's been that bad so far in the city of brotherly love. Now, one interesting development that may be a reason why Hunt gets traded is the way Jerome Ford has looked so far in the preseason. We knew when the Browns went out and picked him in the 5th round, that probably spelled doom for Hunt sticking around past this year because it was obvious this is a replacement pick right here. So I could see this possibility unfolding of, hey, Andrew Berry has looked at Jerome Ford going, we liked you. We didn't know you would be this big of an asset so early on in your career. So why don't we just trade Hunt now instead of just waiting for him to be for his contract to end up, and we get to play you sooner than we thought we would, and we get a pick, right? You combine those two things, it makes the trade a lot more digestible for Andrew Berry because all of a sudden he's not losing Kareem Hunt and not having a viable backup. He has Dearness Johnson, but those aren't the same two types of backs. He can chug and plug Jerome Ford in the passing game. He's looked great in pass protection as well. So that is the only route I see making a Kareem Hunt trade pretty viable for Andrew Berry and the Browns. All right, coming up next on the show, is it time to sign a defensive tackle? I was pretty upbeat about the Browns' interior defensive line after the Jags game, but not so much after the Eagles game. So before we look at that in more depth here, it is game week with our Chicago Bears Now channel here at Chat Sports. So we're doing a sub battle this week. Now Bears Now, bit of a bigger fish in the Chat Sports pond, but we can catch up to them and beat them in subs this week. Join me in the competition by hitting that subscribe button, because even though it's preseason, it's more fun when you win anyway, right? No one wants to talk about a loss. So hit that subscribe button, and let's beat Bears Now in subscribers this week. All right, next segment on the show. Should the Browns be looking to sign a defensive tackle? This was all over Twitter and whatnot yesterday after seeing this Browns run defense get gashed left and right. Now, it is preseason football. So you're not seeing Jordan Elliott and Taven Bryan play a majority of the snaps, right? You're not even seeing them pass the first or two series of a game here. So it's a little bit take that as you will, because if you're going to get pissed that Glenn Logan, who actually had a decent game yesterday, just a quick name drop, is not doing well, he's probably not going to make the roster. So don't read into that too much. But so far in the preseason, this Browns run defense has not been the sharpest tool in the shed. 70 rushing attempts against them so far, 227 yards allowed, and 3 touchdowns. And I think what's a little tough is players who we were kind of counting on for having a bigger role this year, like, say, Perion Winfrey, haven't looked like maybe the Hall of Famer we drew them out to be after getting him in the 4th round. So that's making people a little bit more panic. We know we've got something in Jordan Elliott, because I loved what I saw out of him in the Jags game. Taven Bryan is just going to be another Malik McDowell / Malik Jackson of, hey, 1-year guy. If he can do something for us, awesome. We'll keep him around. If not, rotate it around, and we'll try and hit on a draft pick, and maybe Togiai or Winfrey can step up next year. Now, before we get more in depth on some potential free agent targets for the Browns at the defensive line, if you want to be an MVP of the Cleveland Browns Report, follow us on Rumble. Check us out, rumble.com/Browns Report. Links in the comments and the description. Never heard of Rumble? Very similar to YouTube, another video platform service. It just got a different genre. If you know, you know. So help support the channel over there, rumble.com/Browns Report. So when it comes to the defensive line in general, here's where I stand on this. Jordan Elliott and Taven Bryan have looked solid. Unfortunately, defensive line is one of those positions where you need depth, not in case of an injury, but because these are big dudes. They cannot play every single snap of a game, right? Especially unless you're at the Aaron Donald top tier level, you see a rotation. You see guys come in for a clear 1st and 10 run situation and whatnot, and try to spread around the snap count a little bit just so everyone can have some fresh legs going into the 4th quarter. So could the Browns ultimately decide, hey, we don't have a true nose tackle. We don't have this guy who can clog up the middle of the offensive line and free our linebackers to make plays in the backfield. Because right now, you're seeing guys like Winfrey get blown off the ball, and it's letting opponent's offensive linemen reach the 2nd level and all of a sudden consume JOK and Walker, and they can't make a play in the backfield or stop the run. So there are some guys out there who I think would be worth checking out. Of course, you have familiar faces like Sheldon Richardson, who played for the Browns before being released last year, and he looked good, in my opinion. We'll look at stats in just a second with the Vikings. Then you got the household name in Cleveland this offseason, Ndamukong Suh, who was originally rumored to be interested, or the Browns had interest, and then the Browns said, no, we've never had interest. Sometimes teams like to play mind games and whatnot. Linval Joseph, I think, would be a really interesting pickup, and we'll look at him more in detail in just a second. Then you've got a former first-round pick in Star Lutuele. Yeah, I got that right. Lutuele, who was last year bouncing around a little bit with the Bills for a long stretch of his career, getting up in the age column, and is just not looking like how he once did. A younger candidate in Kingsley Keke. He was with the Packers for 3 seasons. He was just released by the Cardinals a week ago, which probably tells me there's some bigger red flags if a team doesn't even want to carry him past the 80-man roster point. But if you're a 25-year-old defensive tackle as a free agent, the Browns are at least going to consider you for that youth aspect. But here are the 3 big wigs right now in terms of free agent defensive tackles: Sheldon Richardson, Ndamukong Suh, and Linval Joseph. Now, Joseph, I think, could supply something on this defensive line that the others 2 cannot, which is more of your typical, like I said, run-stopping, nose-tackle defensive tackle. So, 57 tackles for the Chargers last season after playing for the Vikings for a lot. 3 tackles for loss, a sack. And Ndamukong Suh, we've gone back and forth on this show. He's just a name at this point. He was still productive last year, and I love that he's been available for his whole career. But a Sheldon Richardson return is probably the most likely outcome. 2.5 sacks last year, 6 tackles for loss. The Browns, I wouldn't say made a mistake by cutting him last year, because ultimately Andrew Berry said, I'm not interested in putting a lot of resources in a defensive tackle when teams are throwing the football more than ever. And we've got guys like Myles Garrett and Jadeveon Clowney just a few feet away from our defensive tackles. But a player who is familiar with the system, he knows the Browns, so he can catch up and get up to speed a lot quicker than Suh and Joseph. And last year, he bet on himself a little bit, sort of, by going to the Vikings. Well, only opportunity, but regardless, it's a player who had to prove himself. That's what I want to get across here. And I thought he did. You ask Vikings fans, hey, how was Sheldon Richardson last year? He wasn't a game-changing factor, but he definitely was not the reason why the Vikings defense lost games and whatnot. So at this point, I'm a little surprised he's still a free agent. You might see teams bring some of these vets in over the next week or so, because early on in camp, they want to see what the young guys who they drafted in UDFAs, who are a lot cheaper, can offer. And if they go, you know what, we gave him a look, they didn't have what it takes, we know what Sheldon Richardson can do, let's get him on board. Now, overall, the big question I want to ask from this segment of the show: should the Browns sign a defensive tackle? S for sign or P for pass? Before I give you my opinion, I want to know yours down in the comment section. I am in on bringing a veteran defensive tackle in, at least for a workout. Like I said, defensive tackle is a position where you see a bit of a rotation. It's not just 2 guys the entire game. And so far, outside of Elliott and Bryan, Tommy Togiai's looked good. He has surprised me. Winfrey has not looked like he is someone who's ready to play meaningful snaps. I mean, Togiai last year hardly played much. Well, not hardly, but played, I think, 6 games. Best game was that Patriots game. So I just don't want the day to come where the Browns are just super razor thin and they are 1 injury away from going, we have someone starting right now who really isn't even at backup level, but it's a rookie and we're going to keep him around and invest in him, and that's all good and stuff. But this team is ready to win right now, right? This team is not in a position to just hang around and watch guys develop and see if they can be something in a couple of seasons. No. This roster is one of the best rosters in the NFL without their starting quarterback. Do not mess around and wait and see if some of these young guys can develop. Sorry, hate to stunt their growth, but they've had some preseason games to do that. Haven't seen it quite yet. So if they haven't looked good against other teams' backup offensive linemen, I don't know why that's going to change in the regular season going up against 5 starting Hogs. All right, before we get on out of here, follow me on Twitter at Matthew Petey. Hit that subscribe button for more Browns content, and we'll see you guys later with the latest Browns news and rumors.